Hi, everybody. Aaron Hood here with Love and Purity Podcast. I've got Samuel Wearp with me here, and we're going to be talking about the Torah portion, Vayetze. So it's good to be back. It's been a few weeks. Braden and Tally have been filling in. Great blessings on them for doing that. I got Samuel Wearp with me here. We're in the great state of Missouri, and we've got the Torah portion, Vayetze. And what I wanted to kind of dig into about all of this portion is just the relationships and how the relationships that we have here on earth are imagery. They're things to help us understand more. Like God is our Father, and that imagery is, and our earthly Father has a big part of how we visualize God or how we relate with God. In the same way, marriage. And there's a lot of relationships in this. We have man and his wife. We have father-in-law, son-in-law. We've got father, son, mother, and son.
Whole gambit. It's the whole family.
It's the whole family. Gambit.
Yeah.
And so
all relationships.
We were going to talk about a few things just quickly, though. Vayetze is he went out, and it's referring to Jacob as he's leaving home. It's Genesis 28, verse 10 through chapter 32, verse 2. And the Torah portion is that. Half Torah is chapter 12, verse 12 through
Hosea.
Hosea 12, verse 12. 14 through 9. And then New Testament portion is John 1, 43 through 51. And so there was a couple of relationships that I was kind of going to emphasize on, man and his wife, and a servant and a king. And so the man and his wife is obviously, that's in the Torah portion we have here. We've got a lot of, just because you got something doesn't mean that, or your parents have something that you're going to get it. If your parents have a beautiful relationship, there's work on our part in order to have that. And so we've got these two sons out of Isaac and Rebekah. We have this picture of a man and his wife, God bringing them together through miracles. There's this Jewish thought that a man and his wife are separated, at birth, and they come back together when they're married. We can really envision that with Isaac and Rebekah. I mean, there's this man who's dedicated his life to the Lord. He lays down his life on the altar, right? There's books and a lot of really good teaching out there, as far as Isaac being a representation of the Messiah.
Yeah.
And Rebekah as the bride. And then their children, we have Esau. He gets the two daughters of Heth. He marries them. And then when he realizes that, this just shows how clueless he was. When he realizes they don't make his parents happy, he goes out and marries another woman that is still not, going to be someone that I think that his parents. And so he just was grasping for straws at that point. And so the moral of the story for Esau is 3 wrongs don't make it right. And
that's right.
I think, and then Jacob, we have this question of his mom tells Isaac, she says, I'm weary of my life because of the daughters of Heth. And we all know that if there's relationships that are that have the most, it's a daughter-in-law and mother-in-law relationship that's like got the most jokes about it. That's the hardest one.
Right.
And so we don't really see a good relationship here. And, before I go on too far, the reason, Samuel is here with us is because he's kind of in the throes of this. Thankfully, his bride-to-be and his mother have a great relationship.
Yes. They started their relationship before I ever knew
my bride. I didn't want to bring him in on that note without clarifying that. But so he's got a few more months, I guess, and going to be getting married soon. So we're really excited for him. And so I'm hoping to kind of see some insight or just how some things have maybe changed over the last couple of months, and how he sees things. I have a brother-in-law that just knew at child training was so simple, and and he's not married yet, and I'm looking forward to the days when he has the children.
For sure.
And the perspective changes. So our perspective changes in those seasons of life. So,
but he didn't want to ask the questions just man to man. He wanted to bring me on a podcast and get everybody in on the scoop.
I wanted everybody to be able to hear it firsthand from
That's right.
Straight
so
from
it's
the
gonna
mouth.
Be fun.
So it's going to be kind of raw. If he doesn't have an answer right off the top, we might come back to it and let him think about it a little bit. But I'm wanting it to kind of be fresh, kind of be from the heart. And so I think that he can do that. So why don't we just go ahead and get into a little bit of that,
Sounds
so
good.
How long have you been planning on getting married now? Has it been few months. I mean, just be generic. You don't have to be
planning on getting married.
Yeah,
I was planning when I was 17.
Yeah, you want to get married right off, right?
Oh, for sure.
And the Lord kind of just, how old are you now?
I'm 28.
A little bit older than 17.
Yeah.
Just real quick, just a little bit on that journey, like when you were ready and God said, not now. And then you were ready again and not now. And, what did that look like?
It was a process of laying it down and finding the thing that was in front of me and working towards that. And so, it's also interesting because, Keela and I have been on the same, journey in many ways, and we've been around the same people. And so it's almost like we've lived in the same communities, and we've just never crossed paths. And so, and we even have talked, even just recently, we were talking about a conference where I had been to. It was a Ohio Bell conference, and there were two. There were three conferences. There was and two that I went to, and one that I didn't. And the one that I didn't is the one that she went to. And so it's just weird because God will guide you into the right moment at the right time of meeting. And so learning to trust Him. And I would have just said it was a process of just learning to trust Him. I mean, obviously I'm 28. I came to the point where I said, I don't think it's happening.
Right. If ever.
Right. I was enjoying life.
Busy.
I was staying busy. Right? Yeah. And so, and it's beautiful to see how she, steps in to complement, and it's so well.
Yeah.
Better than I knew how to pray for is what God provided for me.
Right.
And so I didn't know, I didn't know the prayer, right? I didn't know the magic words, and I was definitely praying for a wife and for my wife. But, when she showed up and throughout our conversations, I've come to realize just how God ordained marriage is. Yeah. When He brings you the perfect complement.
Right. And that in Isaac and Rebecca's story, like we see that, like he's waiting, I think he's 40 something years old, which, in biblical times, there was some time that passed before people got married. It wasn't like at 20 years old, they got married in those days. So, but the way that, Rebecca is brought to him by a servant picking her out of, a family, hundreds of miles at least away, and bringing her to is like the choice or the picking. God does that. And it's just really neat. But we have Jacob, and he's sent off to find a bride. That's his main objective. That
there were any other family issues going on.
Not that there was any other issues going on, right? And these relationships, this is something that myself, I come from a big family, and then you got your share of brothers and a passel of extended relatives. Most of us have that, and those relationships, like we just came through Thanksgiving. It's like that's get the family together. Don't talk about politics or religion, because nobody agrees on on those things all the same way. But the thing about relationships, I feel like, is it has such potential. Like it's a bag that can be so good, and it can be so destructive. In the jail ministry, I run into guys all the time that are in there just because of a real damaging relationship, whether it was with a young lady or whether it was with their parents, abuse, and these relationships mold and shape how we see the world as far as hope,
For sure.
And a stable home is, so important for the development of someone. And so here Jacob is, he's gone off, or he's being sent out for his life, and his mom is saying, I'm weary of my life. She never, as far as we know, right, she never sees Jacob alive again, right, as far as we know. And so, like, what was supposed to be a short trip, takes 14, up to, could be 20 something years, 20 plus years. And we just never really know what life is ahead of us, but those relationships and those decisions that we make. And there's a lot of questions here, as Jacob is going up, he sets his sights on Rachel, and it says that he kissed her, before they were married. I don't advocate for that. Yeah, but biblically, if we're going off of biblically, but you should definitely
when you see the girl of your dreams, kiss her.
Don't do that.
There's a lot of things in the Bible, right? There's a lot of things in the Bible where it doesn't advocate for it, right? It's just telling you the story,
right? And one of those things is the fact that Jacob had more than one wife, and as we're reading this, we're like, is it the right one or more than one? You know, when in Jacob's case, he's deceived, right? And it's interesting how his name comes into play in this later on. His name is changed to Israel, but his very name means deceiver. And so he has this course. He thinks that he's marrying this one girl. You know, he says it seems like a couple of days. He loves her so much. He has this love in his heart for this young lady. And his father-in-law, that's the other, you know, that's the other relationship that's always on edge. But we have to ask, was Jacob right in falling in love with Rachel, you know, and being motivated by this love? We know that's what he went up to do. It's not wrong for a man to fall in love with the right woman, right? And so that we have these questions. And I just wanted to mention Psalm 127, 1-5. It's unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it, right? And so Jacob's going up and he has this interaction on the way up, right? It's a lot of people in this Torah portion, this is what they really bring out and talk about mostly. But it's this ladder that is set up that goes up to heaven. The angels are coming and going. And God says, wherever you go, I'm going to be with you, but I'm going to bring you back here.
Right.
And so he goes forth with nothing, really. I mean, he just, whatever he could carry.
Right.
And we know that he comes back with his wives and the children. And we see just how these divisions, the rivalry, the bitterness, and just caused so much of a havoc in Jacob's life. And we can see from this that this is an unhealthy family relationship, right?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, this is an unhealthy family relationship. This isn't anything that God would want or that we should want even for ourselves. And the response, something that I found really moving kind of through this, but, you know, Rachel's barren, or that God restrains from her the fruit of the womb. It seems a lot because of the Lord's pity on Leah, you know, and it says unloved, but
it says Leah was also barren because it says the Lord opened Leah's womb because she was unloved.
Right.
So seemingly she was also
also barren. And we see this throughout
Sarah,
all of the matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca,
Rachel,
and Rachel. And yet they continue to marry into this family. You know, you would think that this, but the Lord, and I think it's interesting how Jacob responds to Rachel, saying like, you know, give me children or else I die, right? Because Rachel sees that there's a problem here. And Jacob's response is, am I in the place of God,
right,
who's withheld the fruit of the womb, right? And so she says, you know, well, you know, take my maid, his wife. And in comparison, you know, we see that actually in Abraham also, that same concept that, so he marries his servant, you know, Sarah's servant girl. And then so Jacob marries Rachel's servant girl, right? They both listen to their wives in this case. And it caused a lot of heartache. But what do we see the difference in Isaac? Like Jacob, he says, I'm not in the place of God, and he just kind of leaves it at that, right? But Isaac, we know, prayed for his wife for 20 years.
20 years. Mm-hmm.
Like he was adamant that he wasn't going to take another wife. We don't know, you know, it's not in the text that maybe Rebecca offered, you know, for him to take another wife. We don't know that, but we see his...
Let's say it was culturally appropriate at the time to take on another wife for lineage sake.
And yet he wouldn't do that. Isaac, you know, held on to this belief that through this woman, in the same way, and I think so much of this was probably from what he had been told by his parents, Abraham and Sarah, about how he was a miracle child, and he had the faith because of their faith to hold on to that. And so Isaac prays, and we see this difference between Abraham and Jacob and Isaac. And then moving to Hosea 12:2, we see kind of the imagery of one man, one wife relationship, as it says that Jacob, he took care of sheep, or he watched over the sheep in exchange for a wife, right? And I also thought about how Moses, for Jethro, he was a shepherd for a little while. We don't know how long before you know, he married Jethro's daughter, Zipporah. But it says here, Jacob fled to the country of Syria, and Israel served for a spouse, and for a wife he tended sheep. So as I was sitting here just off camera beforehand, Samuel reminded me that he actually did a sheep shearing in Israel.
I did.
Right before he got married. And so maybe it's for you.
Works.
You know, if this is a word for you, you know, he has ears to hear, let him hear. There's sheep to be sheared in the land of Israel, and I'm sure in other places as well. But that's just a little thing I learned about that. And so it might be it might be biblical to serve for a spouse. There's something here for us to learn, to glean from, the deep things of the law that we're gleaning from.
Well, it does help. We were talking about, so Moses works for his father-in-law, and it kind of maybe irons out the relationship. And we see actually they had a great relationship, far into Moses's, Jethro comes to meet Moses after they leave, after they leave Egypt. And so we were talking also about that, about the importance of, it's important to know your father-in-law, right? Moses had a great father-in-law. Jacob did not. And so know the family you're marrying into, right? Know who you're getting into relationship with.
And I think that's just so true. We're as on that topic, as we were talking about that, it's more important almost to know the family than it is the girl herself. Because the family doesn't have to put on a show for you. Or the family doesn't change because you're not marrying them. So you can get a good feel. And when you're courting or someone, then you really should spend a lot of time with the family. I knew this was a really neat story, and I plan on doing this with my own little girl. When someone comes around asking, he took the young man and he said, all right, we're going on a mission trip to Haiti. And they went over there like non-electric for like 2 weeks, and they sweat together and they work together. And after
who that person is.
you find out, you just strip away all the comforts. They went without showers for a week on end, and they bonded, and they were able to really connect away from his daughter, right? There wasn't that. And so I think that was a really good, and I believe, it's difficult. One of the key elements here that we're talking about, and something that's important, is that families know each other.
Right.
Yeah. It's good for families to know each other, and this is another reason to be in fellowship with people, not necessarily for your own sake, for your own accountability. That's one part of it, but these relationships, it makes finding a spouse for your children, a smoother process, and it's God's design for us to be touching or moving in one another's lives.
Right.
And so that's a little plug for community, and I'm not meaning like live on the same property community. I'm meaning just you're with and around people of like-minded, and that's important. Sure. That's really important.
Well, because just going back to Genesis, which this is in the prior portion, but we're talking, so Jacob ends up leaving his father's house because he's looking for a wife and fleeing from Esau. But the instruction that Isaac has is, he says, do not marry the Canaanite women, right? Don't marry a foreigner, meaning don't marry someone outside your beliefs. Like, the way you want to go, this is your destiny. Like, the person you marry sets your course, and it doesn't just set your course. It sets the course for your family. Right. And so, a lot of people talk about Ruth, right? Ruth came into the people of Israel, engrafted herself, said, I want to be a part of this story. She was the great grandmother of David.
Yeah.
Now, what a lot of people don't know is the other side of that, right? What was her name? Ruth and
Orpah.
So Orpah returns back to her home. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that traditional Judaism, what they tell us is that she was the great grandmother of Goliath.
Okay.
So you set your destiny, like by who you marry, and in the direction for not just you, but future generations. And so, don't go after the Canaanite women, right? Don't go into a different lifestyle. Like, find somebody that agrees with your vision and your mission for life.
Yeah. Inspires you. It's the point, it's difficult, but it's true. The scripture is very clear about not being unequally yoked, right? And it's important for you to find a spouse that is inspiring to you, not just to settle. It's not best just to get married. That's not the ideal, right? It's to find that soulmate, if the Lord has that for you, and he will bring it in his proper time. With Samuel here, 28 years old, a lot of years of, Lord, I'm laying this down, whatever you have. Marriage should be because you're following God, not I'll follow you, Lord, if, kind of thing. And
for sure.
Just kind of on that note, my brother, he had something really powerful to say when he was courting his wife. He said, when I laid it down, I told the Lord, I said, God spoke to him. He said, do you think that I can ruin your life? Am I going to ruin your life? Do you think that if you let go, I'm going to ruin your life by bringing you the wrong person, or all of the extra people that are at play? And he said, these forces are not greater than me. And he said, so you can trust me that I have your best, and I'll bring you the best, and it'll be for the best, And so that was something that really spoke to him in a time when there was, stress on, how long until the wedding, or, where is it going to be, and all these things that were kind of these decisions that, can cause a lot of friction. And yet he was able to really find rest in that God would care for him,
for sure,
and care for the situation. So, running through here.
Well, just to comment on that, because I'm having these conversations now about wedding and monetary conversations and all of this, and I guess maybe it's just I'm not going to say I have a couple more years under my belt. I'm a little older, not way older, So God also answered that prayer, because I didn't want somebody. I didn't want to be one of those old guys stealing the young maidens, Yeah. So, but just in the sense of like having that conversation of, I've been waiting for, and that's what I tell her. I've been waiting for you for so long that I'm not really worried anymore about, say, the future of how is this marriage going to happen, and where's the money going to come from, and how are we going to pay for all of this? Like he brought me you, and that's the sign that I can trust him with everything, and he's going to provide for us, and he's going to be there. And so, after waiting for so long, you almost get this confidence of, God, this is right.
Yeah.
He wants us together. He's made that clear. And now he's gonna be there for us as we continue forward seeking him. And so you can trust him as you wait. You can also trust him after the fact that he will provide.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm sure that's gonna get tested, right? So I'm not gonna pretend like it's all easy, and it's all roses, but
yeah.
Yeah.
But if you start with some roses,
yeah, sure.
Helps.
Yeah. I started with roses. But yeah, like I trusted him to bring me this far. And so if we can just see the things that he's done in life, that's even when God says to Moses, right, you can't see me face to face, but I'll allow you to see my back.
Mm-hmm.
What that really means is you might not be able to see the future, but when you look back in your life, right, you'll see how I've moved.
Right.
And so I think that's for us as well. Like I look back at life, and then I can say, wow, like God has been there.
Right. You can't see it then, right? Very rarely see it now. Right. And that's something that, as you were talking, I was just wanting to encourage you all, make this choice not solely based upon how you feel, your emotions, let your intellect kind of like bring, are we unequally yoked? Do we believe the same things? Ask those questions, and have those things that are, you are willing to overlook, and those things that, you're going to keep, waiting on God. And then after you've made that choice, that mental, and all those that are accountable, or all those that are involved, parents or close friends, once they're all in agreement, or the majority in agreement, right? Then allow your heart to really go, and allow your heart to really fall. And I think this verse here in Hosea, I wanted to read Hosea chapter 14, verse 4 says, I will heal their backsliding. I will love them freely, for my anger is turned away from him. And so this outpouring of God's love is upon us when we choose to follow the Lord, right? It's kind of an intellectual, it needs to be more so. I feel like, when you're choosing to serve the Lord, it doesn't need to be from this place of, maybe sometimes, a lot of times it's this emotional urge, and people doubt that later on, they kind of, well, did I make that choice? And it really needs to be something like in countries where people are, persecuted severely. It's a real mental choice. They have to think through what that means and count the cost. That's what the scripture says.
For sure.
And I think that this applies also in our relationships, our marriage relationships, to commit to something, be ready to commit to it. It's a commitment. Right. And chapter 14, verse 8 says, what have I to do anymore with idols? Ephraim shall say, what have I to do anymore with idols? I have heard and observed him. I am like a green cypress tree, and your fruit is found in me. And so it's this choosing. God asks us, he says, choose.
Right.
Between me, if they're God, serve them, right? It's the whole Elijah story, right? He says, if Baal is God, serve him. But if he's God, then serve him and him only, right? There's a singularity of this focus and towards one. And we have that in our, typical marriage vows, forsaking all others. In this portion in Hosea 14, verse 9 says, who is wise? Let him understand these things. And he who is prudent, let him know them. For the ways of the Lord are right. The righteous walk in them, but transgressors stumble in them. It's wise. It's wisdom for us to forsake all others and to have this one this one thing I desire, right? To be with the Lord in the presence of God.
Right.
So just real quickly, servant and the king. This is a lot about what love and purity promotes. It's this relationship, man and wife, and how the whole betrothal and all of this also, but the servant and king. And we have in John 1:43, verse 51, it's Nathanael recognizing Yeshua as the king of Israel. You're the son of God, right? And this came upon him, by, I think, teaching, but I think by the Holy Spirit, really. He spoke out, and he says, you believe because of this saying, I saw you under the fig tree. He says, you're going to see greater things than these. And so Nathanael recognized him, and his relationship with the Messiah was one of a servant and a king, and for us, as we grow, there's imagery for both of these seasons, for us as in the season that Samuel's in the throes of, he's the bridegroom and the bride, but there's also a servant king. There's a relationship that we should honor, as it says in the scripture that Sarah called Abraham Lord. There was a deep respect. And for us also, as we are loved by God, right? He sets his love upon us, that we say, behold, our king is coming to you lowly and riding on a donkey. He's lowly, he's humble, he's come down to be a part of our life, but he's still king.
Right.
And, he will
For
reign.
sure.
So do you have some closing thoughts?
I was just thinking, so in this story, so Nathanael was found and he's under a fig tree, and I think what a lot of people miss is that was actually one of the traditional places you would go and study Torah.
Okay.
Right. As you would sit under your,
right,
and it's a very biblical thing, right? It's the concept of that in the Messianic age, it talks about, that every man will sit under his vine and under his fig tree.
Yeah.
And what are we going to be doing? Learning the Torah, learning the Torah of Messiah,
the
right?
kingdom of God, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, when we look here, we see that was what Nathanael was engaged in, and that's when the call comes, right? That's when it's like, okay, now it's time to move,
right?
And so, interestingly enough, for me in my story, the way that God revealed that Keilah was one for me was actually through reading Scripture. And so I was doing a study, and I came across her name. It wasn't a name it wasn't a biblical name, but it was like her name in a Hebrew word, which also spelled Kala, bride.
Yeah.
And that was what revealed to me that she was the one. And I knew after I told my parents, like, when you see your parents and how excited they are, then you're probably right. You're on the right track.
Yeah.
And so I would just tell people, like, engage in the word, and the answers, even for life, are specifically there for you. Right. So, and that was what it was for me. And I would always ask the Lord, I don't know how you'll show me, but show me through your word. And it wasn't just, some generic biblical passage, but it was very, it was at the right time, at the right moment, when my eyes were open and the scales fell off and I saw it, and I was like, wow,
the Lord did that.
Yeah. And so I would just encourage, especially people that are single, I can only speak for 28 and under, but I'm sure for those of you that are older as well, I would just encourage you, engage in the word, engage in understanding God, applying His word to your life, and the specific answers you're looking for are even the specific answers are found here.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't make it a requirement. Don't be, Lord, I'll serve you if I get married. Don't make that something that you hold on to, but a condition on the Lord. Walk with the Lord with a dedicated heart, and let Him bring all of the good things that you need and that He has for you in life, and just lay that down. And that's where you'll find peace, whether you're married or whether you're not. It's beautiful. I'm glad the Lord had it for us, and I'm glad that you're in this season. Amen. And may the Lord bless us all to be blessed in what He has for us as we walk out our calling. So we're signing off. Blessings to you all. Thank you for joining us, where we're calling disciples to a lifestyle of love and purity and joyful expectation for the coming King.
For salvation, ready to be